Welcome to my March TBR. I am pre-recording this way ahead of time, so I don't necessarily have all the books that I plan on reading in March. Some of them may be coming to me from the library, some of them may be on their way to me through Better World Books, but I do think that I have a substantial amount of them, enough at least to pre-film this video, because I have a lot going on in February. I don't want to have to postpone the actual normal time that I post my TBR videos. So here we go. Let's dive into March. In the month of March, I will be, of course, reading 2 books for 2 prompts for the Read Harder Challenge. The first prompt is to read an online web comic, and so I am going to read Lore Olympus. I have not read Lore Olympus, nor have I read a webcomic online. I did read Heartstopper, which I believe was a webcomic, but I read it in printed form. And I could do the same for Lore Olympus. I probably will do the same for Lore Olympus, but I also could equally read it online, and I might do that. Honestly. If the library hold doesn't come in, it's not something that I think I'll want to read again, so I don't think I want to purchase it. So perhaps I will read this online. Lore Olympus, from what I understand, you probably know better than I do, is a imaginative retelling of some Greek myths. I don't know. We'll find out. Next, the category is previously DNF'd. I'm going to pick up this nonfiction book that I started reading in the summer, right before my Joey dog passed away, and then I just couldn't find the concentration to continue it, even though I was really enjoying it. So I will be reading The Sewing Girl's Tale, a story of crime and consequences in revolutionary America. In this nonfiction book, I can tell you it's written very much like a narrative, like a fictional story, but it is completely researched and supported. It talks about a young woman who meets a kind of a rogue type character who takes advantage of her, how she regains her reputation. I think she regains her reputation. There's some sort of a victory for her, and I don't know what it is because I haven't gotten that far, and I don't want to know before I read the book. I think that she changes the U.S. court system in some way. I don't know. We'll find out as I read it, but I will be reading that for the previously DNF'd category. And then my Facebook friends recommended for the 12 in 12 months challenge that went around at the beginning of the year. My Facebook friends recommended The Whistling Season by Ivan Doig. And I know nothing about this, so I'm going to look it up. Can't cook but doesn't bite. So begins the newspaper ad offering the services of an A1 housekeeper, sound morals, exceptional disposition that draws the attention of widower Oliver Milleron in the fall of 1909. That unforgettable season deposits the ever-whistling Rose Llewellyn and her font-of-knowledge brother Morris Morgan in Maris Cooley, along with a stampede of homesteaders drawn by the promise of the Big Ditch, a gargantuan irrigation project intended to make the Montana prairie bloom. When the schoolmarm runs off with an itinerant preacher, Morris is pressed into service, setting the stage for several kinds of education, none of them of the textbook variety. Morris and Rose will bring to Oliver his 3 sons and the rambunctious students in the region's one-room schoolhouse. So it sounds like a Pioneer Days sort of story set in Montana at the end of the British Victorian era, and it sounds heartfelt and hopeful. I like that. I like that. I think that's a great recommendation for me. So I will be reading The Whistling Season by Ivan Doig. I've never read anything by this author, although I've seen his name in bookstores. And then my Bookstagram crowd suggested Im and the Big Whom. Im and the Big Whom by Jerry Pinto. So Im and the Big Whom says, meet Imelda and Augustine, or as our young narrator calls his unusual parents, Im and the Big Whom. Most of the time, Im smokes endless beaties and sings her way through life. She is the sun around which everyone else orbits, but as enchanting and high-spirited as she can be, when Im's bipolar disorder seizes her, she becomes monstrous and sometimes with calamitous consequences for herself and others. This is an accomplished debut. It's graceful and urgent, one-of-a-kind voice will stay with readers. So this sounds pretty hard-hitting and serious. It's set in India and written by an Indian author. I love books set in India. I love reading about Indian families, and I'm sure that this will be heart-wrenching, but I am willing to give it a go. And then I will be reading, I never want to pull my gigantic bound all the works of Shakespeare title off of my shelf. So I will be reading Julius Caesar out of that big bound up book. I do not have a standalone edition of Julius Caesar. I've read Julius Caesar. This will be my third time, and it's not one of my favorites, but it's grown on me in recent years. So we shall see. My book of the month choice for February was The Writing Retreat by Julia Bartz. I'm very excited about this. It is a thriller, so I actually don't want to read anything about it. Nothing. Tell me nothing. I don't want to know. But I do want to read it. And then I am going to read, in February, I fell in love with Mary Stuart. And so I'm going to read 2 books on my Kindle. I have every day, I do silent reading with my students, and that is when I read on my Kindle, and I'm loving reading Mary Stuart on my Kindle. I've read Mary Stuart in book form and didn't get as into them as I do on my Kindle. I don't know what the magic is. I'm not going to mess with it. I'm going to keep going. So I got 2 books off of Kindle. One is The Ivy Tree by Mary Stuart, and one is Madam Will You Talk by Mary Stuart. So The Ivy Tree says Mary Grey had come from Canada to the land of her forebears, Northumberland. As she savored the ordered, spare beauty of England's northern fells, the silence was shattered by the shout of a single name, Annabel. And there stood one of the angriest, most threatening young men Mary had ever seen. His name was Connor Winslow, and Mary quickly discovered that he thought she was his cousin, a girl supposedly dead these past 8 years. Alive, she would be heiress to an inheritance Connor has determined to have for himself. Ooh, sounds so fun. I am just in love with Mary Stuart novels. So that's The Ivy Tree. Madam Will You Talk? And I know that this was her first novel. So it's her debut. So I'm not expecting to be wowed, although I am also simultaneously expecting to be wowed. Let's see. Madam Will You Talk? It says Charity Selborne, a lovely war widow, and her irreverent artist friend Louis Cray arrive in the south of France expecting a conventional holiday. The vistas of Provence delight them, and Charity soon meets David, a young man of 13 who is having trouble with his dog. He introduces himself, and Charity is charmed until she senses a terrible maturity behind his grave eyes, and shortly hears the rumors about his father. From this point on, the tension mounts steadily until it reaches the breaking point, while the thirsty summer heat, the noise of cicadas, and the dust of country roads all contribute to the superb realism of Mary Stuart's very first novel. Okay, so that one sounds a little bit dark, but I trust Mary Stuart, so I'm going for it. I will be reading both of those. And then I got this one. I've been wanting to try Patricia Wentworth, not wanting to commit to a new Marple-esque kind of series. So I stumbled upon this book by Patricia Wentworth that is not one of the Miss Silver mysteries, I don't think, and I'm going to give it a try. It says, Jervis Ware is in a predicament. According to Ambrose Ware's will, his grandson must marry within 3 months, or the estate goes to his great niece, Jervis's fiancée Rosamond Carew. But the deceiving society beauty has just dumped Jervis, which leaves him scrambling to find another bride. Nan Forsyth has secretly loved Jervis for 10 years. He has no inkling that Nan once saved his life and is now about to come to his rescue again. She knows that with her working class background and the emotionally fragile sister she's raising on her own, she is hardly the proper wife for Jervis. Yet, Marry him she does. The description goes on, but I'm going to stop there. It just sounds so much fun and a little bit dark, but also maybe happy in the end. So like I said, I've been wanting to try Patricia Wentworth, but I don't want to start them as Silver Mysteries because it's just a little too close to Miss Marple for me at the moment, but I do want to try Patricia Wentworth. Then I'm going to be reading this standalone novel by Claire Alexander. I have it on my Kindle as well. And this is supposed to be lighthearted. Sometimes these kind of books are marketed as lighthearted and then they're not. We shall see, but I would love to give it a try. It says that she has a full-time remote job and her rescue cat, Fred. Her best friend, Sadie, visits with her 2 children. There's her online support group, her jigsaw puzzles and favorite recipes, her beloved Emily Dickinson poems. Also, keeping her company are treacherous memories of an unstable childhood and a traumatic event that had sent her reeling. But something's about to change. I don't want to know what that something is, so I'm going to stop reading right there. But I think that this has the potential to be very feel-good. It feels a little bit maybe Eleanor Oliphant-ish, but maybe a little less dark, hopefully. We'll see. And I just think it's going to be great to balance out the many middle grade March books that I will be reading. And my plan is to do a middle grade March month-long reading vlog. So you should be able to hear my thoughts on every single one of the middle grade books that I read. Last year I did this really cool thing where I let my students, my middle grade students, pick my middle grade TBR, and I read some things that I had never thought that I would read ever, and found some new exciting titles that I probably would have overlooked for my whole life. It was a great adventure. This year, however, I am teaching older kids and they are reading Colleen Hoover. So I don't think that I can ask them to recommend middle grade books to me. So I have picked a perfect for me middle grade book list for this year. The first book on that list is Bedknobs and Broomsticks by Mary Norton. I read the Borrower series and I've seen the movie of Bedknobs and Broomsticks, but I've never read these books. I know that this is a bind-up of 2 different books by her to create Bedknobs and Broomsticks. I know that originally they were published as 2 different books, The Magic Bedknob and Bonfire and Broomsticks, but I'm going to read it in this bind-up, so I will be reading both of those. If you're not familiar, it says, prim, quiet, elegant Miss Price is a witch. Well, not quite, not yet. She's a witch in training. Miss Price hasn't got the hang of flying on broomsticks, nor has she learned how to be properly wicked. And as for her spells, well, practice makes perfect. But she can't practice if the 3 Wilson children, Charles, Carrie, and Paul, reveal her secret. In return for their silence, she enchants a brass bed knob so that when the children twist the knob and wish, the bed will take them anywhere they want. But traveling by bed is a clumsy sort of magic. What the children want is adventure. What they get is trouble. Trouble of the most breathtaking, fantastic, unforgettable kind. I'm very, very excited to read Bedknobs and Broomsticks. Then I'm going to listen to Tom's Midnight Garden by Philippa Pierce. I have this on my Libby app and have never read it. I know it's a classic, but it will be new to me. So it says, when Tom's brother gets sick, he shipped off to spend what he's sure will be a boring summer with his aunt and uncle in the country. But when Tom hears the old grandfather clock in the hall chime 13 times, and he's transported back to an old garden where he meets a young lonely girl named Hattie. Tom returns to the garden every night to have adventures with Hattie, who mysteriously grows a little older with each visit. As the summer comes to an end, Tom realizes he wants to stay in the garden with Hattie forever. I'm looking forward to reading this. Then for the Kindred Spirits book club, I'm going to be reading The Year of Miss Agnes. I do have a copy of this somewhere. I read it several years ago for middle grade March and really, really loved it. It's a short, quick little read about a teacher in Alaska, in like far out Alaskan villages, and the impact that she makes. She's decided she wants to leave and return to England or Canada, wherever she's from. You know, it's hard. It's hard, especially when you know what you're doing is making a difference. So it's about these 2 sisters, but it's also about Miss Agnes. And then I'm going to read Mandy by Julie Andrews Edwards. This is, of course, Julie Andrews of Mary Poppins and the Sound of Music fame. I've never read anything she's written, not her memoir, not anything. So I'm very excited to read this. This is Mandy, a 10-year-old orphan, dreams of a place to call her own. Escaping over the orphanage wall to explore the outside world, Mandy discovers a tiny deserted cottage in the woods. All through the spring, summer, and fall, Mandy works to make it truly hers. Sometimes she borrows things she needs from the orphanage. Sometimes, to guard her secret, she even lies. Then one stormy night at the cottage, Mandy gets sick and no one knows how to find her, except a special friend she didn't know she had. So I'm very much looking forward to reading that and meeting Mandy. I am going to be reading Those Kids from Fawn Creek by Erin Entrada Kelly. When I started working at the school I was working at right before this one that I'm currently at, I had to teach an Erin Entrada Kelly book, and it was the first one I'd ever read by her. It was called Hello Universe. So I had to teach Hello Universe, and I absolutely fell in love with those characters, with the story, I was so taken aback by the one that starts her own horoscope business and puts her advertisement in the shopping store, like in the bulletin board in the grocery store. I just loved it. I loved everything about it. And so when that got a little old, we moved on to We Dream of Space by Erin Entrada Kelly, which was totally different, but also extremely good, about a family in going through their own challenges alongside the Challenger explosion. And it was so well written. And so when I saw this one, I scooped it up. I did not know, I got it from, you can see the mark, I got it from Book Outlet. I didn't know I was going to get a signed edition, but I did, and it was such a wonderful surprise. So this is Those Kids from Fawn Creek. And it says, every day in Fawn Creek, Louisiana is exactly the same. And every kid at Fawn Creek K through 12 is the same as last year and the year before that. Well, except for Rinny Dean. She moved to Grand St. Lodge, the next town over. Good riddance as far as best friends since forever Dorothy Doucette and Grayson Broussard are concerned. Rinny Dean was never all that nice to them. Every day in Fawn Creek, Louisiana is exactly the same, and every kid in 7th grade is part of the same group they've been in since forever. The self-proclaimed God Squad, Dalen, Balin, Haley, the Fawn Creek Royalty, Janie, Abby, Barn, and Slowly, the Jocks, Max, Colt, Daniel, and then there's Dorothy and Grayson. Every day in Fawn Creek, Louisiana is exactly the same until it isn't. I just know, even though I don't know what it's going to be about or what is going to happen, I just know that it's going to make me cry, and it's going to be so feel good and uplifting in the end. And I'm looking forward to every moment that I spend with it. Then I'm also going to read The Bookshop of Dust and Dreams. I mean, just look at that cover. So many middle grade books that I buy because of the cover. It's 1944, set in New York, and Poppy's family owns and runs Rhyme and Reason, a magical bookshop that caters to people from all different places and time periods. Though her world is ravaged by World War II, customers hail from the past and the future, infusing the shop with a delightful mix of ideas and experiences. Poppy dreams of someday becoming shopkeeper like her father, though her older brother Al, almost read AI, though her older brother Al is technically next in line for the job. She knows all the rules handed down from one generation of shopkeeper to the next, especially their most important one. They must never use the magic for themselves. I'm going to stop reading there because I just looked ahead a little bit and there's, I think, some spoilers. So I'm going to stop there to not spoil for me or you. But this is The Bookshop of Dust and Dreams by Mindy Thompson, and that just looks gorgeous and awesome. Super fun. I am going to start this journey. This is The Incorrigible Children of Ashton Place, The Mysterious Howling by Mary Rose Wood. I think so many people have read and loved these. They've been out for quite some time. I love this hardback edition with the original cover. The end papers are gorgeous. There are some illustrations in here that are just so evocative, and I am into it. I think a lot of people know what this is about, but I don't really know what it's about, but I'll go ahead and read the inside here, it says the incorrigible children actually were. Discovered in the forests of Ashton Place, the incorrigibles are no ordinary children. Alexander keeps his siblings in line with gentle nips. Cassiopeia has a bark that is usually worse than her bite, and Beowulf is alarmingly adept at chasing squirrels. Luckily, Miss Penelope Lumley is no ordinary governess, only 15 years old and a graduate of the Swanburn Academy for Poor Bright Females. Penelope embraces the challenge of her new position. Though she is eager to instruct the children in Latin verbs and the proper use of globes, first she must eliminate their canine tendencies. It sounds fun. It sounds fun. So that is The Incorrigible Children of Ashton Place. That's just the first book in a series. I will be reading a Karen Cushman. This is Matilda Bone. It says Matilda Bone is highly educated, especially for a girl in medieval times, and she has been taught to occupy herself with spiritual matters, rising above worldly concerns. But when she's sent to the workshop of Red Peg, the bone setter in Blood and Bone Alley, to serve as an apprentice, all her training and refinement is useless. In Peg's domain, nothing matters but earthly pursuits, such as healing the injured. But Matilda doesn't know the first thing about buying food and lighting a fire, let alone setting bones. How can she flourish in such a place? Does she even want to? So, of course, this is by the author of Catherine Called Birdy. I have never read Catherine Called Birdy. I've never read Catherine Cushman, but I hear she writes great historical fiction where the characters tend to make realistic choices. And so I am interested in visiting a story that I don't know anything about by the author. I'm going to start this journey. I've wanted to do this for a long time, but I didn't want to listen to it, and I didn't have a copy, but I recently got I recently got a book outlet copy, and so I am going to read this one. This is Tuesdays at the Castle. Again, this is the first in a series by Jessica Day George. And it says, every Tuesday, Castle Glower takes on a life of its own, creating and rearranging entire rooms, stairways, and secret passages. Princess Sealy records every new twist and turn of her beloved home, and no one, not even her siblings or parents, knows the castle better than her. One day, Sealy's parents disappear while traveling to a royal event, and it's not long before intruders from neighboring kingdoms arrive, threatening to take over the magical castle. Will Sealy be able to protect her family and her home before it's too late? All right, sounds like a great, fun adventure story. I'm also going to start this journey, The Keeper of the Lost Cities by Shannon Messenger. Everybody knows what this is about. I don't really know what it's about. I know a little bit. I've kind of avoided it because it's such a long series and such long books, but I'm diving in. I'm just diving in. It says 12-year-old Sophie Foster has a secret. She is a telepath and has a unique ability to hear the thoughts of everyone around her, something that she's never known how to explain and has made her an outcast, even in her own family. But everything changes the day she meets Fitz, a mysterious boy who appears out of nowhere and also reads minds. She discovers there's somewhere she does belong, and staying where she is will put her in grave danger. In the blink of an eye, Sophie is forced to leave behind everything and start a new life in a place that is vastly different from her own. So I know people love this series. I've only ever seen or heard one negative review about the series, and I've seen hundreds. So like just in people's wrap-ups and things. So I know that this is a beloved series. I think it's probably quite high quality, and I definitely think it is the kind of thing that I will love. So I'm diving in. I'm going to listen to The Verdigris Pawn by Alyssa Wishengrad. Let's see what that name really is here. Alyssa Wishengrad. I read that tiny little writing correctly. All right. A boy who underestimates his power. A girl with a gift long thought lost. A land ready for revolution. The heir to the land should be strong, fierce, ruthless. At least that's what Beau's father has been telling him his whole life, since Beau is the exact opposite of what the heir should be. With little control over his future, Beau is kept locked away, just another pawn in his father's quest for ultimate power. That is, until Beau meets a girl who shows him the secrets his father has kept hidden. For the first time, Beau begins to question everything he's ever been told and sets off in search of a rebel who might hold the key to setting things right. Teaming up with a fiery runaway boy, their mission quickly turns into something far greater as sinister forces long lurking in the shadows prepare to make their final move, no matter the cost. But it just might be Beau who wields the power he seeks, if he can go from pawn to player before the land tears itself apart. That sounds awesome. I'm going to listen to The Flourishing of Florelei Laurel. It says Florelei Laurel, freshly expelled from Mrs. Coffee's School for Young Girls, works as a flower seller in an English village with her guardian brother Tom, miles and miles away from their real home in France. Tom and Florelei are drowning in debt, but fortunately Grandmama arrives to save them. Unfortunately, Grandmama's idea of saving means sending Florelei to the Adelaide Laurel Orphanage for Unfortunate Children and shaping her into a proper lady, i.e. ridding her of imagination, daydreams, paintings, and poetry. Before Grandmama can take her away, Florelei discovers a hidden box of dried flowers and a letter from her mother who had mysteriously disappeared years ago. And I don't want to read any more because I think there might be spoilers, but that sounds delightful. And this says, half moorfolk and half human and unable to shape-shift or disappear at all, Mokwul threatens the safety of the band. So the folk banish her and send her to live among humans as a changeling. Named Saski by the couple for whose real baby she was swapped, she grows up taunted and feared by the villagers for being different, and is comfortable only on the moor playing strange music on her bagpipes. As Saski grows up, memories from her forgotten past with the folk slowly emerge, but so do emotions from her human side, and she begins to realize the terrible wrong the folk have done to the humans she calls Da and Mama. She is determined to restore their child to them, even if it means a dangerous return to the world that has already rejected her once. So that sounds intense and glorious. Then I am also going to read The Secret Garden. This will be a reread for me, but I haven't read this since I was a teenager, so it will feel like a first time, I'm sure. I'm going to read this is by Frances Hodgson Burnett, and I'm going to read this for the Buzzword Readathon. The word secret is what we're looking for in March. But it also is going to count for me for middle grade March. And also it is the book that I pulled off of my shelf in December to add to my TBRs across the year. So looking forward to diving into that one. That is what I will be reading for middle grade March. I do have more books on this TBR. We will see how many I get through, but there are a lot of those middle grade books, but I read middle grade extremely quickly. So I'm pretty sure that I'll be able to get through all of these. I kind of thought of them as like middle grade books and real books. I know middle grade books are real books, but I just read them very, very quickly. So here are the other books that I will read in the month of March. I want to read I Capture the Castle. I have read this before, but I want to reread it. I've wanted to reread it for several years. I've had it on multiple TBRs over the last couple of years, and I just haven't picked it up. And I am going to prioritize picking I Capture the Castle up. It says, I Capture the Castle tells the story of 17-year-old Cassandra and her family who live in a not-so-genteel poverty in a ramshackle old English castle. Here she strives over 6 turbulent months to hone her writing skills. She fills 3 notebooks with sharply funny yet poignant entries. Her journals candidly chronicle the great changes that take place within the castle's walls and her own first descent into love. So, super fun, super sweet, super quick to read. Don't know why I haven't picked it up. I don't know why I keep avoiding picking it up, but I want to pick it up. Do you ever have those books like you want to read them, but you just don't? That is I Capture the Castle. I'm going to read Dragon Springs Road by Janie Chang. I read something else by Janie Chang. I read another book by Janie Chang, Legend is in the title. It's a pretty purple and blue book. Loved it. Read it last year before last year, I think. And I loved it. It was about a group of students that were carrying these special scrolls to safety, trying to get themselves to safety when the Japanese during World War II, invaded China. So absolutely loved it and planned on reading more Janie Chang. I realized that she has a new book coming out this year, which I have pre-ordered and will really, really be excited to read later this year. I have this one on my shelf, so I pulled it off my shelf to read as well. This is Dragon Springs Road. It says, in 1908, Jilin is only 7 years old when she is abandoned in the courtyard of a once lavish estate near Shanghai. Jiling is Zhejiang, Eurasian, and faces a lifetime of contempt from both the Chinese and Europeans. Without her mother's protection, she can survive only if the estate's new owners, the Yang family, agree to take her in. Jiling finds allies in An Juan, the eldest Yang daughter, and Fox, an animal spirit who has lived in the haunted courtyard for centuries. But Jiling's life as the Yang's bondservant changes unexpectedly when she befriends a young English girl who then mysteriously vanishes. So I am looking forward to this. The other book that I read, Legend is in the title. Gonna drive me nuts. Anyway, the other book that I read by her also had this magical realism with like spirits and different aspects like that, different layers. And it was done beautifully, excellently, absolutely loved it. That book by Janie Chang is called Library of Legends. Also pulled off of my shelf to read is The Inheritance. This also can count for the previously DNF'd prompt. I started this past summer and did not continue it, and I would like to finish it and see if it is a book that will stay on my shelf or not. Oh, I should tell you about it. It says corporate attorney Hannah DuPont Lowell always pictured herself returning to New Orleans to retire, just not yet, but after her Manhattan company abruptly lays off its staff, there's no better place to figure out a next move than the porch of her plantation-style home. Nestled in this stunning garden district, the DuPont house has been in Hannah's family for 2 centuries. With its 18 rooms and 2 guest houses, it's far more home than widowed Hannah needs. Still, it could make a wonderful inn, especially if she can convince her friends and former co-workers, Tanya, Jasmine, and Nadia, to join in the venture. But in the meantime, Hannah has a school reunion to attend. It sounds like just kind of a feel-good friendship, maybe romance book. Light, airy. I'm looking forward to it. Also pulled off my shelf is this romance. How yellow is this book? I love it. So last year I had a friend who sent me a box of romance novels and asked me to read them, and I have slowly been reading them, and this is one of them. It says, an outcast fighting for her future. Thea Knight loves a spot of mischief. She especially loves her current mischief, masquerading as her sister while finalizing her scheme to expose the dastardly knaves whose lies ruined her life. Then, big, bad-tempered Lord Luxembourg upends her game by maneuvering her into marriage. But it's her sister's name on the license, so the marriage won't be valid. Thea's idea? Keep pretending to be her sister until she can run away. A recluse haunted by his past, Rafe Landcross, Earl of Luxembourg, has no love for mischief or marriage, or people for that matter. The last thing he wants is a wife, but if he marries, he'll receive a large sum of much-needed money. Then he learns that Thea Knight is using a false name. Rafe's idea? Pretend he doesn't know her true identity, marry her, and send her packing. Once the money is his. A compelling attraction that changes their lives. But as passion ignites and secrets emerge, the mutual deceptions turn tricky fast. Rafe and Thea face irresistible temptations, unsettling revelations, and a countdown to the day when Thea must leave. It's a fun, tender, gothic-flavored historical romance that tells of a fake marriage between a grumpy, scarred hero and a trickster heroine who reminds him how to play. And it's yellow. Look at the stars. Look how they shine for you. And everything that you do. So you are all yellow. I am going to read The Unlikely Pilgrimage of Harold Fry by Rachel Joyce. I want to read this whole series. I read Mrs. Benson's Beetle last year, and it was my favorite read of the year. I would like to read everything that Rachel Joyce has written, but to date, I have only read Mrs. Beetle. So, I'm going to start The Unlikely Pilgrimage of Harold Fry. I'm going to read the whole series this year. The last book in the series or the most recent book in the series is called Maureen. I think it is the last one, and it releases in February. So I will have all the books before I start reading them, and I think I'm going to love them. I think I am. I think I love Rachel Joyce's writing. I know that it makes me cry, but I'm gonna do it anyway. Last year in January, I read the first book in the Queen of Hearts series, and I'm finally going to read the second book. This is Blood of Wonderland by Colleen Oakes, and this series basically retells Alice in Wonderland, but gives the Queen of Hearts a very complex backstory. There are 3 books in this series. I'm going to read the next 2 this year, so I will be reading Blood of Wonderland. I really liked the first book, and I don't really want to tell you much about the series because I think it's enough to know. I mean, it's YA, romance, adventure, thriller, trigger warnings. There's some heavy stuff in these books. But mostly I think it's enough to know that it is a retelling of Alice in Wonderland from the perspective of the Queen of Hearts, giving the Queen of Hearts a very complex backstory. I'm going to continue on with this series and read The Winter of the Witch. This copy has not arrived on my doorstep yet, but I will have a copy of it. Loving this series. It gets better and better. This is the last book in the series, so it will be the first series probably that I finish this year. That will be bittersweet because I've really fallen in love with this series. I will be continuing on with this series. I'm just going to listen to this one. I think that I might only listen to them moving forward. We will see. But I'm going to listen to Voyager, which is the 3rd book in the Outlander series. This one is on its way to me, but it needs to arrive. But I'm going to continue on with Kresley Cole's Arcana series. And this is The Dead of Winter, the next in that series. I'm going to continue on with Poldark. Again, I think I'm just going to listen to Poldark from this point forward, but we shall see. I do have a copy of this book somewhere, but I don't know where. But I listened to Demelza from my library, and I enjoyed that a lot. And so I think that as I move forward with the Poldark series, I will be listening. So Jeremy Poldark, coming to me, to a Libby app near me. I'm going to read The Book of Life. This is on its way to me in physical format. This will be the first book in this series that I've not ever read before. So the previous 2 have been rereads, and this will be a first time read for me, finally continuing on with that series, and I'm excited about that. I will be reading The Belle of Belgrave Square. This is the 2nd book in that Mimi Matthews series. The one that I read last month was about the girl who wears haute couture and rides horses and falls in love with her not seamstress, seamster, person who makes her habits. And so I am looking forward to reading The Belle of Belgrave Square. I really like Mimi Matthews' writing. I'm excited to have found her. So yes. And then I'm going to do something a little bit interesting. I think it's a little bit interesting anyway. I'm going to read 2 books with the same title. The first book that I am going to read, well, I don't know what order I'm going to read them in, but the first book I'll show you is called Courtiers. Or courtiers, however you want to say it. And it is about all of the people behind the scenes. It says intrigue, ambition, and the power players behind the House of Windsor. So I'm going to read this one. And yes, it's probably going to drive me nuts and it's going to be expose a little bit, but I think it's more about the people who do the exposing than the things that they expose, and the people who like populate the inner world of the Windsor family and the influence and lack of influence that they have. I'm going to read this in correlation with Courtiers. This is The Secret History of the Georgian Cult. Not cult, court. King George had a cult. You heard it here. Exposés. No. The Secret History of the Georgian Court. So it's going to do the exact same thing. This one is by Lucy Worsley. It will not be salacious at all. It will be historically researched and accurate. But it is about the movers and the shakers and the people who filled the inner world of the Georgian cult. Court! I feel like that's some kind of Freudian slip. So I'm going to read about the courtiers in the Georgian court and the courtiers in the Windsor court. One from the past, the 17 and 1800s, and one from the present. And I think that's just going to be so incredibly fascinating. I hope it is anyway. I will also be reading The Secret History of Home Economics, How Trailblazing Women Harnessed the Power of Home and Changed the Way We Live. And this is inspired by my love of lessons in chemistry from earlier this year. I'm so looking forward to reading this book because Lessons in Chemistry is about how Elizabeth Zott was kind of relegated to the kitchen to the point where she's leading this, she's this amazing PhD holding, well, supposed to be PhD holding scientist, and she's been relegated to leading a cooking show on TV, and how she uses that for subversive action to set women free and to change perspectives. And so I am so fascinated about the secret history of home economics and the trailblazing women enmeshed in it. I'm very excited to read this. It says, in this revelatory and lively account, Danielle Drellinger explores how the maligned field of home economics exploded opportunities for 20th century women whose studies enabled them to become chemists and marketers, research childhood development, change food culture, analyze nutritional value, test parachutes, and create astronaut food. With keen insight, Drellinger traces the history of the field, brings forward the racism within the movement along with the strides taken by Black women, and looks at the choices home economics women made in their personal lives. The Secret History of Home Economics restores this critical field to its rightful importance. And I think that will be fascinating. And then a book I got for Christmas that I would like to read. Maybe it will teach me more about my own little whirlwind. This is The Year of the Puppy, How Dogs Become Themselves by Alexandra Horowitz. And this says, what is it like to be a puppy? Author of the classic Inside of a Dog, Alexandra Horowitz tries to find out, spending a year scrutinizing her puppy's daily existence and poring over the science of early dog development. Few of us meet our dogs at day one. The dog who will eventually become an integral part of our family, our constant companion and best friend, is born without us into a family of her own. A puppy's critical early development into the dog we come to know is usually missed entirely. Dog researcher Alexandra Horowitz aimed to change that with her family's new pup, Quiddity, otherwise known as Quid. In this scientific memoir, she charts Quid's growth from wee grub to boisterous sprite, from her birth to her first birthday. Horowitz follows Quid's first weeks with her mother and 10 roly-poly littermates, and then each week after the puppy joins her household of 3 humans, 2 large dogs, and a wary cat. She documents the social and cognitive milestones that so many of us miss in our puppies' lives when caught up in the house training and behavioral training that easily overwhelm the first months of a dog's life with a new family. And focusing on training a dog to behave, we mostly miss the radical development of puppies into themselves through the equivalent of infancy, childhood, young adolescence, and teenagerhood. By slowing down to observe Quid from week to week, the year of the puppy makes sense of a dog's behavior in a way that is missed when the focus is only on training. Horowitz keeps a lens on the puppy's point of view, how they begin to see and smell the world, make meaning of it, and become an individual personality. She's there when the puppies first open their eyes and first start to recognize one another and learn about cats, sheep, and people. She sees them from their first play bows to puberty. Horowitz also draws from the ample research in the field of dog and human development to draw analogies between a dog's first year and the growing child and to note where they diverge. The year of the puppy is indispensable for anyone navigating their way through the frustrating, amusing, and ultimately delightful first year of a puppy's life. That's me. So I'm excited to pick that one up and read it. And then finally on Audible, I have The Medieval Mind of C.S. Lewis, and I might actually get this on my Kindle as well to read along with. I have a feeling that it will be pretty quotable, but we shall see. It is how great books shaped a great mind. And I also have a feeling that very much like Diary of a Provincial Lady and The Secrets of Heartwood Hall, that this is going to give me a reading list that I can't refuse. So we shall see. I see my 2024 reading rolling out before me, and it's only March. Well, February, really. We shall see, but I'm really excited about this book. I don't know a ton about it other than it's about how great books shaped a great mind. I know C.S. Lewis. I love C.S. Lewis. I know medieval thinking. I'm curious to know how those two things intersect, and what books will be recommended and discussed in this great book. Believe it or not, that is it. That is the 2,375 books that I will read in the month of March. I've been doing such a good job, really. Not listed on here will be whatever book my In Real Life book group picks, but other than those, I doubt that I will have space to add anything else. A lot of these were added, like the Mary Stewarts and the Patricia Wentworth. Those books were added at the very last minute because I just know, like, I'm mooding them. I'm mooding. So I added them, right? And if there's something that I don't read, there's something that I don't read. It's not the end of the world. Several of these books are on this particular stack because I haven't read them yet, even though I've tried in the past. I'm looking forward to every single one of these. I'm excited to read every single one of these. I'm gonna try to read every single one of these, but you know what? Even if I only read one, it's a success. It's a success because I had the fun of planning and I had the fun of trying. Anyway, I am going to do what I always encourage us to do. Hey, let's go read.